I'm Dr. Anthony Raimundo. This is Theater 101, a humanities course. And as you can see, I'm not in my man cave, my studio. I'm outdoors. I'm in a whole different setting. That's right, a setting. A setting is a place in theater, movies, TV, whatever the case may be, that's expressing a story. It could even be a narrative in a book. A setting is a place where the story takes place. And today, this is taking place outdoors because I've changed the setting. And today we're going to be talking a little bit more about setting. Because, see, a setting is not only a place, it could be a time. So, for example, if I wanted to do a movie or a movie was done, for example, the Ten Commandments, well, the setting would have to be Egypt, because we're going to do Exodus, and it would be in ancient times. Now, if I wanted to do a movie about a modern day gangster, well, then it's going to be in modern time, maybe New York, maybe Chicago. It might be set in the 30s, or it could be set right now, in today's era. So, a setting is either a place or a time. And actually, it's both. It's the place and the time that that particular story takes place. But see, now let's take that concept and use it for us personally today. Well, you were born and raised in a setting. You were born, well, I was born in 1949. You might have been born after me. You might have only been born, let's say, 20 years ago. But you were born somewhere in the United States. Unless you migrated to the United States, then you would have been born in another country. And that would have been the setting of your birth. Now you're living in the United States, and where you live is your present setting. But now, setting also dictates a lot of other things. And we're going to be talking about those other things also. Because, see, if your setting is in New York City and maybe in Brooklyn or the Bronx, you're going to grow up with a certain kind of community mindset for that area. Now, if you're born in Montana on a ranch and your daddy owns 100 head of cattle, well, you're going to have a whole different experience than someone born and raised in the Bronx. So you see, setting also has an effect on who we are as a person. And that means or deals with our environment. And our environment sometimes has effects on our behavior. And in many cases, it does. Because if you're living in the ghetto and you're struggling to get out and you can't, well, you're going to have a whole different mindset than someone living in a mansion that's worth $20 million dollars and goes to a private school. You're going to have a whole different set of experiences. So we're going to deal a little bit more. Now, I just posted two pictures of two different settings. One was abandoned buildings, the other was a neighborhood with well maintained buildings, painted nicely, very attractive. It looked like a very nice neighborhood. Now, based on those two settings, the abandoned buildings and a nice, clean neighborhood, what kind of a story do you think you would tell based on the setting? Now, the abandoned buildings, have a number of possibilities, but you wouldn't be saying that a rich family lives there. You wouldn't have a rich family living in an abandoned building because it doesn't fit the setting. On the other hand, the other photograph, we see well-maintained buildings. So possibly people who are upper middle class, who have a decent job, may live in that neighborhood. Also, there were businesses. So you'd have stories that you could possibly create around a business. A thriving business, maybe the business is doing poorly, but you could create a story based on the setting. Now, the settings would also indicate something else that I'm going to talk to you about in my next video. But in this one, I want you to think about what kind of a story would you write based on the setting? What comes to your mind when you look at abandoned buildings? What comes to mind when you look at a thriving neighborhood with well-kept buildings? What kind of a story would you place in those particular settings? Now, also notice that even the abandoned buildings would not be a setting for a Western. The abandoned buildings wouldn't even be a setting for an ancient film because the construction type of those abandoned buildings, most of those houses and buildings were probably no more than 150 years old. So keep that in mind also, that the structures of these two type of buildings in these two photographs represent also an era. And it's obvious in the well-kept neighborhood that we're looking at the present. So what I'd like you to do as a homework assignment is just think about what kind of a story would you create in those settings. You may want to write it down. You may want to jot it down, put it in a journal or something, because you never know. You may end up really wanting to create either a novel or maybe a film script or a play based on the ideas that you formulate from looking at those two pictures. So until next time, God bless.